Up next, we check in on the latest when it comes to markets. Joining the broadcast this week is Jeff Peterson. He's the president of Heartland Farm Partners. We had the chance to visit on Wednesday afternoon, and I began the conversation by discussing the sideways trend we've seen in the corn and soybean markets. Sideways trend. That's how I'd summarize kind of the corn and soybean markets as I see it from my vantage point. What's going on here?
Yeah, I think if we step back and look at it, if you look at corn, we had a nice run up when we had the quarterly stocks report and the prospective plan report back there on the 28th of March, and it ran right up, it ran right smack dab into a downtrend line, a lot of resistance, a lot of selling. And really the best thing to say is we've got enough stocks out there to keep everybody kind of comfortable, and the funds, we can't forget about them. Currently on the fund side, on the corn, they're short about 259,556. Basically contracts, and as a result they're trying to buy those back, but they don't want to physically push it too terribly hard, so they're just biding time. What everybody's biding time for is they're waiting for something, I think, on the weather side, whether that be out of South America or the US. I don't think there's really too much on the demand side that can cause us to have a bounce. And then over on the beans kind of, they didn't quite get the response that basically corn had back there coming out of that quarterly stocks and the prospective planning. They actually kind of put in their peak back there on the 21st of March, and they've kind of been grinding sideways, but now here lately they've started to kind of accelerate a little bit back down to the downside. Now the funds there are also short, about 139,000 contracts, a little bit over that, and they've been very reluctant to buy that back, and I guess that makes sense because if we look at it, there's plenty of beans out there in the world market. Right now, if you look at Brazil, they're about 80% harvested on beans. They've got beans that are cheaper than ours. And as a result, the market's got basically enough soybeans to work with right now.
You talk about the global supply. How about here in the United States? Do you get the sense there's still quite a bit of unsold corn and soybeans in the grain bin?
Oh, there most definitely is. And that, that started all the way back in last summer. And what we generally ended up finding is that the farmers as a whole, because of the conditions we ended up having, just didn't sell a lot of new crop bushels. And when we got it around harvest time, then we didn't see a lot of new sales get made coming out of harvest into the winter. And as a result, they've been hanging on to quite a few bushels. And as a matter of fact, the quarterly stocks report came out at the end of March, kind of reinforced that. Overall, we know we've got more stocks out there across corn and soybeans, but for those commercial grain traders, those off-farm stocks, it's tighter on both corn and beans. It's not that the bushels aren't there, it's just that they're sitting on the farm waiting to be sold yet.
To that point, how does basis look right now? Going to be some opportunities seasonally ahead?
Yeah, there really is, and that's what's been really interesting to watch. We've really kind of got the tale of two crops. So on the corn side, what we've got is that corn demand right now is really good. As a result of the bushels not moving to the end users, whether that be the ethanol plants, feedlots, even the rail shippers are showing some really good bids. And what that's doing right now is everybody's trying to physically get bushels to move, and the only way they can get them to move is to kind of increase that basis. And I think that's given us a good opportunity here in April and May. One of the concerns, though, that I physically have, though, is as we move further out, there will be a lot of corn that will move. So whether the basis starts to weaken in June or July, it's going to depend upon how planting goes. But over on the bean side, we haven't seen the strength there, and that probably shouldn't surprise us. We've got some good demand on the crush side. Overall, on the export side, we know that South America's got a lot of beans out there, and as a result, we just haven't seen the strength come out of the export market as much. And as a result, just haven't seen the basis opportunities there. They're just kind of biding their time.
Okay, I'll ask you about South America more here in a second, but back here in the United States, of course, planting season is gearing up here across the Heartland. Your thoughts on where we sit? A lot of people have been tracking the drought monitor. We're a little bit better situation when it comes to moisture as compared to last year, at least.
Yeah, it sure does seem like there's pockets out there as you move over in parts of Iowa where they still are showing pretty dry conditions, but moving back to Nebraska, overall we're in better shape than we would have been a year ago. But the thing I think that everybody's concerned about is that will we get the rains that will physically allow us to recharge that subsoil even a little deeper. A lot of areas we're hearing there is moisture, good moisture up on the top in most areas, but you get down there in that 2 to 3 foot area, all of a sudden we start running out of moisture, so we're going to need some additional moisture. Now if we look at nationally the pace, we're about 3% planted. Normal 5-year average should be about 2% planted, and I'm talking about on corn. Next week we'll get our first numbers on the soybean side, so planting's moving along. But we've got some weather conditions coming in that honestly could make it so that the West kind of gets a chance to run, the Western Corn Belt. Eastern Corn Belt looks like it's going to be pretty wet, so we may not get as fast a planting pace as maybe what I would have thought of looking at these forecasts about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, checking in on South America. Anything in particular we need to note for right now?
Yeah, there is a number of items down there. I would say overall, first of all, looking at the soybean side, they're about 80% harvested on the beans. Overall, it looks like the bean yields are probably going to come in a little bit smaller, a little bit lower yet as we go forward. But something we got to remember, when we take into account Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and also Brazil, there's still probably going to be over 300 million more bushels of beans than there would have been last year. So we got to be aware of that. Over on the corn side, that safrinha corn crop, it's going along. Only thing we have is there's about 30% of that crop in the southern parts of Mato Grosso do Sul, in Paraná, and also the southern parts of Sao Paulo that's a little dry. Now they're getting some moisture, so that may ultimately help them out, but that's one of the things that if that area stayed a little bit too dry too long, we could physically see a little bounce in the market. Then we move down to Argentina. With Argentina, they're about 2% harvested on the soybean side, about 11% harvested on the corn, but we are seeing them basically at last week, Buenos Aires Grain Exchange surprisingly did lower their corn production number by a couple million metric tons. So we're going to have to continue to keep an eye on that one, Bryce.
All right, we'll keep an eye on the markets for sure. Thanks, Jeff.
You bet, always fun.